Mastering the basic knobs of the machine is pretty easy, but you got to play with them for just a little bit. So first off, when you're on stitch number 1, you're on the one stitch in the top row, the orange stitches. We'll show you how to get to the white stitches in just a second. So when you're on the straight stitch, then the stitch length, which is the little picture here, can you see how it has long, medium, and short? That can be a one way to remember. This is for length. As you're sewing, a length is changed based on your thickness of fabric. When you work with really thick fabric, you kind of go up a little bit higher. About somewhere between 2.5 to 3 is kind of a medium setting. So when you go thicker fabric, you get a longer stitch. By the way, you can make these adjustments while you're sewing. So as you sew for a longer stitch, you can stop. We can see our stitches have gotten much longer as we go. Now, as we make them much shorter, that would be for finer fabrics. Tighter woven fabrics are best used in that probably 2 millimeter range. And then, of course, we can go all the way down to 1. If you get to 0, you're not going anywhere, so don't stay there very long. And just find what is best looking on the fabric you are working with. It's always good to run a test sample as you go. Now, to change to a zigzag, be sure your needle is not in the fabric. So go ahead, bring your needle up. If you bring it all the way up, get in the habit of going up, finishing the stitch. And then as we need to go to a zigzag, stitch number 2, just change the stitch selection dial. Now, up here at the top, this is width, and there is a little picture here to remind you, the width from small to large. The widest width that this machine will stitch is 5 millimeters wide. So let's go ahead, we'll start at the widest setting, but if you roll it towards 0 while you stitch, you'll get a narrower zigzag as you go, and all the way down to 0. You're at 0, what do you get? You get a straight stitch. All right, so we'll get us back on here. So once you start working with a zigzag width, let's go maybe up to about 3.5. Then we can actually start playing with our length. As we bring this closer and closer together, we can get to a perfect satin stitch. You're going to be somewhere between 0 and 1, probably somewhere in the middle, depending on your thickness of thread. A perfect satin stitch is when you look down here and you see your stitches have closed up. Now, to get a better result of this, let me show you what we're going for here. I'm going to lift it up, take it out, cut the thread. See how nice and close together? So many people think this is a satin stitch. I'm like, no, it could be so much better. It could be prettier. But a better foot to use for this technique, remember that B foot? The B foot is the one that had the cutout behind where the stitches formed. And then that way we don't pile up as quick. It really makes it the best suited foot for this stitch. So going back here. Get it just right. You shouldn't have to push it through. If you're pushing it through, it's not working. Like I'm already starting to pile up. I went a little too close to 0. Go ahead and get it going, and then you can make it to any width that you want. So if you want something narrower or something all the way wide. This is pretty. A lot of people use this for applique. You can see I can get different widths here. When you do it with just a single piece of fabric onto another piece of fabric, you need to have some type of tearaway underneath. The tearaway is going to support it so these stitches don't crumple your fabric and make it rippled, and that will tear away later. It just is perfect. It won't, it'll definitely be what you need it for. Okay, so going back to a straight stitch. So we're going back to straight stitch. When you are, let's go back to a stitch length of 2.5. That's kind of my go place here, right there in the middle. When you need your needle position to move from center to left, we also use the stitch width dial at the top. And this is when you're in the straight stitch. The straight stitch, when you are sewing, you do need to be on 5 for most of your work, because when you are using the guides on the plate here, then they will say your seam allowances. So if you have a 5/8 inch seam allowance, you're going to put it at the 5/8 inch mark, and from that mark to center needle position is 5/8. Always read your pattern and see exactly what seam allowance the designer has noted it for. It does vary from pattern to pattern and project to project. So always look for that. Don't assume that it's 1, because it can switch it without you knowing it. Okay, that needle position we can move. Should we want to stitch closer to the edge or just be near something, here's how you move your needle position. When it's at 5, you're in the center, but as you go towards 0, you're going to be over here on the left-hand side. So you can easily use the edge of your presser foot sometimes as your guide and be over a ways. Just measure and see if that would be appropriate for what you're working with. Okay. And then remember, put it back to the center. when you are done. Okay, pull that out. Cut your threads. That is the basics for selecting stitches. When you want to get to stitches that are down in the white area, then you're going to turn your stitch length knob all the way around past 4 to the gray plus minus area. Kind of center it in there for now, and then depending on your fabric, that it may change a little bit to get your stitches looking nice. And we're going to talk about what these stitches are good for. But just to show you, if you're on your straight stitch, now you're going to get stitch number 1 down here in the white, and it is a triple straight stitch. It's going to have forward and reverse stitches. All the stitches in the white area are for stretch fabric or something that's going to have some give. Love this stitch. I'll show you where I will use this, but it's a really nice heavy looking stitch for reinforcing any place that needs some extra. It's going to have a lot of weight bearing on it, and it also stretches, so it's a great place to put it in the back pair of a pair of pants or jeans, on the seat, because that's always cut on the bias area, and that will hold it wonderfully, plus have the stretch that we need. All right, we will go on to all the utility stitches in the next video.